Hello and welcome to the Voices of the Vic podcast with me, Ben Aiton and James Batchelor. We're here to discuss another Watford game, and this time we're discussing a clean sheet.
Come
First time
on,
Watford kept a
come
clean
on.
sheet in a Premier League for how long has it been, James? I can't remember. I know we've had about six managers since our last clean sheet, but
Well, yeah,
how long ago?
I think the run stretches back to obviously, before we got relegated. I think it was Liverpool, the 3-0 win. That's the last time we kept a Premier League clean sheet. So I believe, I may have this wrong, but I think it's been 31 Premier League games since we last kept a clean sheet, spanning over, I think, 2.5 years potentially, which is
Yeah.
which is absolutely mental. But we've kept one. We've kept one against Burnley, and we've got a point on the board.
Yes, much needed point on the board as well, and the confidence this clean sheet is going to give the boys as well is going to be vital. But yeah, I saw a stat that BT Sport put up during the game, and they were saying that Watford was closing in on the record of the most clean sheets by a Premier League club. Well, without a clean sheet in games, it was West Brom had 34. So, like you said, Watford would have been on 31 if it didn't go our way in that game. So it's good to and I can't believe 31 games without a clean sheet. That's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it probably sounds worse than it is. I mean, obviously, it is quite a bad statistic, but you have to remember, obviously, we kept plenty of clean sheets in the Championship. It doesn't
Yeah.
include last season. It does include the season before as well. So probably seems worse than it is, but obviously, regardless of that, it is a really really terrible statistic. And as you say, we're only what 2 or 3 away from matching the record that West Brom set. So thankfully, we didn't beat that record, and we kept the clean sheet against Burnley in Roy Hodgson's first game. So for me, it's a good way to start.
Yeah, massively. And I know we've jumped straight into it. So yeah, I'll rewind a little bit. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Obviously, I did actually manage to watch most of the game this weekend. I was out in Milton Keynes, enjoying myself, which is very, very nice. But I am aware of the result. I've watched the highlights back, and actually, I'm feeling quite positive and quite optimistic about the rest of the season. Now, obviously, that could all get taken away from me on Tuesday against West Ham, but a draw against Burnley. Obviously, both teams wanting to win the game, but to be honest, I would take that. And obviously, a few controversial decisions to discuss as well. So I'm all good. I had a nice weekend, and yeah, looking forward to talking about the game. How are you, Ben? And how was your weekend?
Good stuff. Yeah, no, I'm all right, mate. I was nervous all day yesterday. I didn't want to watch this game against Burnley. You knew it was going to be a dirty game, and you heard the weather wasn't nice up north either. And it's quite grim up north, especially without the weather, isn't it? But with the weather as well, yeah, wasn't nice. And fair play to all the travelling Watford fans who have gone up there yesterday to do that trip. I saw some silly times about trains, and you couldn't get a train home after the Burnley game. I think it would have taken about 14 hours for you to get home, and you would probably arrive back in Watford about 7, 8 in the morning. And I don't know why the Premier League does this to supporters. We could have sent like more fans up there. They're probably put off with the train times, and it's just the Premier League have got to start looking after their football fans. And I just thought that was really poor. But yeah, all good, mate. Nervous leading up to a Watford game. I'm pleased we got the point and the clean sheet. And then today I've just had a family day. I went to my mate's daughter's first birthday party, which was pretty decent. Isla loved the ball pit. Mate, she's obsessed with balls. We've just signed her
No,
up
I've seen
for.
a few Instagram stories, Ben, of Isla carrying loads of balls around. So obviously that's her new favorite thing.
It is, yeah. It's literally you can't take them off her. Like a new favourites. We've just actually signed her up. Well, we're on the waiting list for Little Kickers, which is like a little football lessons that you start them. I think 18 months you start, and she's 17 months today. So she just walks around the house just kicking balls. So who knows? She
That's a
might
good
be
that's a good
featuring.
sign, Ben. I think that's a good
Yeah,
omen. Yeah.
I'm not pushing her either. Like she just sees a ball and kicks it, and it's just, yeah, it's lovely to see. So hopefully she might be featuring for Watford ladies in the near future. So fingers crossed. Maybe get me a few free tickets to watch them play as well. I wouldn't say no. But yeah, let's talk about the Watford result now. Watford travelled up to talk Lancashire to Turf Moor. against the Burnley side managed by Sean Dyche, managed to pull off a 0-0 draw, which is, I think, a point before the game we would have maybe taken it. James, do you reckon a point before the game you would have taken it? It was a must not lose kind of game.
Well, I think every game from now until the end of the season is a must not lose. But obviously, this game had bigger impetus on it because it's Burnley, because they're the team directly below us. If they won the game, they'd go above us, and Watford obviously would go to 20th. So, of course, it was a must not lose game. I think both teams, obviously wanted to win. But, whenever that happens, when both teams need to win the game, it always kind of ends in like a drab, 0-0 draw or a very, very low scoring game. So, yes, I would have taken a point. Obviously, would have much preferred the win. But overall, seeing how the game panned out, and obviously the horrendous weather up north, I'll take the draw, and yeah, but I'm happy with it. I'm not overjoyed, I'm not upset, but I'm very, very happy with it.
Yeah, definitely, especially after the performance at home to Norwich last week or 2 weeks ago now, the 3-0 pathetic performance that the boys put in, down tools massively in that game, and to see them react. But I think it's down to the Roy Hodgson effect. We'll just say about who started in that lineup, because there was a few eyebrows raised as to what kind of formation we was going to play. I know Roy Hodgson in his past has favoured the 4-4-2. Or the 4-2-3-1 formation. So you kind of knew what we were probably going to go away from a 4-3-3, which we have played all season. So the lineup was Ben Foster in goal, Kiko Femenia at right back, Craig Kappa and Samir in the middle, and Kamara at left back. The midfield was Kushka, Sissoko, KMB, and Ken Sema. And up front was João Pedro and Joshua King. So looking at that, I think Watford fans wasn't too sure what we was going to do. Were we going to be 4-4-2? Was we going to be 4-3-3? But it was within a couple of minutes you could tell it was a 4-4-2. He went with the 4 across the midfield just to give back the defence a bit more protection, and you could see that with Kushka coming in on the right, he's not a right midfield, he's not a right winger, he's there to do a job defensively. Ken Sema as well, what he's going to bring to the side. He works hard, he just runs all day.
I'll tell you what, Ben, touching on Ken Sema quickly as well, I think it was quite evident to a lot of Watford fans that Roy Hodgson obviously liked him quite a lot. Obviously, the comments he made about speaking to him in Swedish. So actually, for me, on Ken Sema, it wasn't much of a surprise to see him starting on Saturday.
Yeah, talking about the lineup, was you surprised by any of them apart from Ken Sema? Like, obviously, you've just said about, well, we spoke about it last week about how Roy Hodgson speaks Swedish, and there was a bit of he mentioned it in his interview, didn't he, with Hive Live, saying that he surprised Ken by speaking Swedish, and obviously they've probably got a little bit of a bond now. So obviously he probably surprised a lot of Watford fans, because he's not really been in the picture for starting at all this season, really. I think he's only started one game this season for Watford. So Ken Sema came in, but looking at everyone else in that starting line, anyone else really surprise you, or was it just that's who's really started for Watford in recent weeks?
I don't think so. I think maybe Kuchka, just because I'm not his biggest fan, and we've had Zisco, Munoz, Ranieri, and Hodgson, and Kuchka seems to be getting picked under every manager we have. So obviously Kuchka in training must be fantastic, because personally for me, I don't think he offers enough. But then again, you could argue defensively he offers more than some players. So probably for me, obviously Sema hasn't featured much, but for me, I'd probably rather cleverly started instead of Kuchka. But overall, it's what I expected to see from Roy Hodgson. Nothing majorly controversial, but a couple of changes here and there to change it up ever so slightly.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. And I think since Roy Hodgson's came to a club, we've heard about how Ray Lewington stayed behind for a Hive Live interview, and he was working on a training ground. And I think they're really getting their plans in place now. They're really getting their ideas across, and they're making. I think they're making the Watford players understand that, firstly, when you enter a pitch, you need to be defensively solid. You need to make it difficult for the opposition. You need to come away with a clean sheet. And I think his plans worked perfectly. He made it difficult for Burnley. And look, we came away with a clean sheet at the end of the day, but it was a slow start to the game for Watford. It took us a while to get into the game. It wasn't until about 15 minutes in, and then we had our first opportunity where it was good link-up play between Joshua King and João Pedro, and Pedro cut back inside into the penalty box, but then there was a last-ditch challenge from Tarkowski, which was brilliant. Otherwise, João Pedro only needed to slot that into the back of the net. But it was Watford was slowly warming into the game then, but it looked like it was just a slow and patient kind of start from Watford, and we knew it wasn't going to be pretty under Roy Hodgson. But first things first was to make sure you don't concede, and I thought Watford dealt really well with Burnley's attack. Really, I think there was a little bit of a mistake between Craig Cathcart at one point where the ball came over the top and he actually slipped on the floor. And Weghorst was through on goal, but it was great recovery from Kiko Femenia to mop up the pieces there. But I want to talk about Kamara quickly, James, because he's been highlighted a lot from Watford fans on social media, and he's actually been given man of the match by a lot of Watford players, and he would have been my Watford man of the match as well. Kamara is exactly what we needed at left back, and we should have brought him in the summer. But hindsight's a great thing, isn't it, James? But he looks a good, solid addition at left back, doesn't he?
He does. Now, I just think he just gets the club. His interaction with the fans on social media.
That's been brilliant, James, hasn't it? It's only been here a couple of weeks, but the interaction he's got with the fans already, you can tell his heart's in the right place.
Absolutely, and you mentioned we should have brought him in the summer, and obviously we did bring in a new left back in the summer. That wasn't Hassan Kamara in Danny Rose, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, that's not worked out. But Kamara is here now. He's played 2-3 games so far, and to be honest, he's not really made. Maybe against Norwich, he made that slight error, but largely overall, he's been absolutely fantastic. And I think again against Burnley, he showed the quality he has. And to be honest, we've got him for £4 or £5 million. He was the starting left back for Nice in Ligue 1 in France, and at the moment it seems like an absolute bargain. So very, very happy with him. Really, really solid defensively. Offers a lot going forward as well, especially on the overlap. So yeah, really happy with his performances, and long may it continue.
Yeah, talking about Kamara and what he offered going forward, I don't know if you've seen it, James, but that beautiful weighted pass that he it slipped in for Joshua King to run in, and Josh King ended up being one-on-one. The weight of that pass was absolutely superb, and it was refreshing to see that he actually created the chances like that. Messina, you just know what you're going to get with him. It's just long balls into the box. But Kamara, he wanted to keep the ball on the floor, and he wanted to get it into Josh King's feet, and I absolutely loved that about him. And it was unfortunate Josh King couldn't finish it. He really fluffed his lines there when he got through on goal. I thought it was a poor attempt on goal.
I think with Joshua King in recent weeks, he's had a few of them one-on-one opportunities. I think against Leicester in the cup, he had a couple. Norwich, he might have had one as well. It just seems like Joshua King at the moment, it's just not going his way. And I think the good thing for me
levels maybe.
Well, I think for me is he is getting into the positions. He is having shots on goal. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they're not going in. But hopefully. Roy seems to like him. I think he's very, very dynamic. He can hold up the ball. He can win headers. He's got good pace in behind. So I think Joshua King, hopefully in the next couple of games, he'll start to get back up to speed and start scoring the goals for Watford again.
I hope so, mate. At least he's getting in the right areas, and that's all you need to do as a striker. If you get into those right areas, you've got a really good chance of putting the ball in the back of the net. So if he wasn't doing that, like we've seen before with the likes of maybe Andre Gray, he wasn't getting into those positions. So you've got to be in those positions to actually get the rewards, and it will come for Josh King. So I just think maybe at the moment it could be a confidence issue for him. But I can't really see much of a chemistry between him and João Pedro at the moment. I don't know if they need to play a bit closer together. I know they did link up well in the first half where King slipped in João Pedro when he got into the penalty box, and then Tarkowski came back to slide it away. But that was about it yesterday. I thought there was a couple of misplaced passes between them, or heavy passes, but hopefully it's like a partnership that's going to flourish in the future, and it just needs a time to gel because they've not really played together up front at the moment, have they, James?
No, not really. And I think you saw against Norwich, there was a bit of frustration as well. I think Josh King put a misplaced pass into João Pedro, and Pedro had a go at him. So, I mean, it's what you want to see, really. It's competitive football players, wanting to play as good as they can. And, obviously with that comes little arguments, comes little fights. But I think that's, part and parcel of football, part and parcel of life in general. So, to be honest, I don't think we should be too concerned. And actually, if they both get firing and both get playing at the top of their game, you know, a João Pedro and Joshua King partnership up front could be lethal for Watford. And imagine you've got Ismaila Sarr and Dennis down the flanks as well. I mean, that could be really, really dangerous. So I think patience, Ben, really, and you know, hopefully in the next couple of weeks with Sarr coming back from AFCON, Dennis back from suspension, you know, that could be really, really important for us going forward.
Exactly that, mate. We got a 0-0 draw away at Burnley without two of our best players, if you think about it. No Ismaila Sarr, no Emmanuel Dennis. As we're recording now, James, Ismaila Sarr starting for Senegal in the African Cup of Nations game against Egypt. I'm not watching the game at the moment, James. You got it on? You know what the score is? Has he scored yet?
Well, I do have the game on, and Senegal, about 5 minutes ago, were awarded a penalty, which the goalkeeper saved. So there we go. At the moment, 0-0, Senegal versus Egypt, and Senegal missing a penalty. I think Sadio Mane missed that. So very, very interesting. And for me, you know, hopefully, you know, back in Ismaila Sarr, Senegal can go on and win the game. But obviously, Egypt are dangerous. They have Mohamed Salah. So you know, who knows what's going to happen. But I will keep you updated as and when something happens during the game.
I look forward to it, mate. Hopefully, we hear about Ismaila Sarr on the podcast. I'll be buzzing for him because he must have been gutted when he picked up that injury, knowing AFCON was round the corner, and luckily he's came back. He's managed to play. He's managed to get a goal for them as well. So it's good to see that he's starting as well. It's only going to help Watford that he's getting minutes under his belt at this point in the season when we need him to come back and hit the ground running in a couple of weeks' time. He's going to be a new player, isn't he, when he comes back to Watford, James?
Oh, I hate that saying. You know, whenever someone says, "Oh, it's going to be like a new signing, it's going to be like a new player," he is our player. He is our player.
Yeah.
I do have a question back to you though, Ben, because I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days. Obviously, there was so much controversy around, you know, should Ismaila Sarr go out to AFCON or not. But I actually think it was the right decision. Obviously, Watford wanted to keep him, which is fair enough because he is our player. We pay his wages. But actually, he's played a couple of matches. He's getting back up to sharpness. He's with his national team. He could go on to win the tournament. I think actually, you know, we took the right decision to let him go. So for me personally, Ben, I'm happy he's gone and I'm happy he's starting today.
Yeah, no, same. I'm happy that he's playing. I think it's only going to benefit Watford. When he picked up that injury against Manchester United, I did worry because I know there was a lot of talk about Ismaila Sarr maybe leaving at the end of the season, and he would probably go for a big price tag. And I thought, oh, he's picked up a big injury now. How long of a season is he going to miss? Is that going to affect his transfer fee at the end of the season if a club comes in? Because obviously he would have had a big injury against him as well. Would that price tag come down a lot? But luckily, he's came back quite early. He's featuring for his country at the African Cup of Nations. He's scored. Hopefully, he comes back, hits the floor running with Watford, gets another few goals, and that price tag hasn't really dropped because we all know he's too good for Watford. We know he's going to move on to bigger and better things, probably at the end of the season. So, and if he does, he gets my blessing because he has been a good servant for the club. He could have left Watford a couple of occasions now. He could have left Liverpool a couple of transfer windows ago in January. He could have left Watford when we got relegated down to the Championship. And he stuck with us. Fair play to him. He's a young lad. He's got his head screwed on. I think he's got the right people around him as well who are not trying to make him force a move with Watford. They're like, no, you just stay here, knuckle down, and your time will come for a big opportunity at a bigger club. So fingers crossed he comes back to Watford and just bangs in those goals for us because we do need him. And I do feel there's no coincidence that we haven't won a game without Ismaila Sarr since he's been injured. He's so vital to the team. The way he stretches defences, he panics for defenders when he's up against them because of his pace. He's lethal in front of goals as well. So it's not just goals he contributes; it's assists as well. And his work rate's improved a lot this season as well. So he's a big player for Watford. So I'm glad he's picking up minutes now, and hopefully he'll be back soon. Well, he'll be back for the Brighton game, won't he? Because it'll be too soon of a time for West Ham game. It's going to be Brighton after this game. But yeah, I'm feeling we've gone a little bit off topic. So I'm going to go back a bit to the penalty shout in that first half, James.
Yeah.
People watching on YouTube, I can see there's a picture behind us in our background, and it's of the situation of the Watford players crowding the referee, pleading to go look at the monitor, go look at VAR. It happened seconds before the first half whistle. The ball came to Ken Sema. He went to get the ball back across the box, and it hit Connor Roberts' outstretched arm. And for me, I'll come to you first to see if you think it's a penalty or not, James, because I don't. Yeah, I'll give my opinion in a bit. Do you think it was a penalty?
Okay, so obviously it's a very, very difficult one. I mean, for me, I personally don't think it was deliberate. Now, people may say I'm an idiot, but I think that the ball was so close to him. I don't think he really had the chance to move his hand out the way. I think it was the Manchester United game a couple of days ago. There was a very, very similar incident where, was it deliberate? Was it an accidental handball? And whether it's deliberate or accidental, that then determines what the next decision is. I don't think it was deliberate. However, obviously, I would have much rather we got the decision. The Watford players were very adamant it was a penalty. VAR checked it and determined it was not. And I don't know what the reason was for that. I don't know whether they explained it on commentary or not. But obviously, I'd want the decision to go Watford's way. But from an unbiased perspective, I don't think it did hit his hand clearly. I would say that. However, the ball was so close to him when there was such little distance for the ball to travel. For me personally, it would have been very, very harsh on Burnley. However, I do understand why everyone is very frustrated.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I thought it was very harsh when Manchester City was awarded a penalty the other week against Wolves. If I was a Wolves fan, I would have been absolutely fuming because, in my eyes, that's no way a penalty. Just like yesterday, I know Watford fans were shouting and screaming, saying it's a penalty. If I was a Watford fan, that happened. If I was a Burnley fan, if that happened to Watford, I'd be absolutely fuming if that was awarded against us because he was half a yard away from Sema. How's he meant to move his hand out the way of that? I know it was it was an unnatural position, but common sense has to come in here. You can't move your arm out of the way there when you're in such a close proximity, and I just think it's hard for anyone to move your arms down out of the way. I know his back was kind of turning, but there's a reason why it wasn't given on VAR. It's because I don't think there was enough in it to. If there was a couple more yards in it, possibly, but it was so close to the player, I would have felt really harsh. And obviously, we would have loved it to be given, but I would have felt sorry as well for Burnley if that was awarded.
Well, I think VAR is looking for like a deliberate movement by the defender towards the ball. They always say, is the player within their silhouette, as in, are they within their natural position? I'd say he probably was. He didn't. It didn't look to me like he deliberately made that movement towards the ball to get it away. It was more reactionary rather than anything because the ball was coming at him so quickly from such a short distance. So.
And the thing is, it always looks worse when you do a still image on the photo, doesn't it? Because then it looks, that's a blatant handball. But when you do it in full motion,
we can both agree, Ben, it did hit his hand. I think everyone can see that.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can tell it hit his hand. I just think when you slow it down and when you pause it on the impact, that always looks absolutely worse than what it is in real time. Because then a still image doesn't tell the whole story, does it? And we've seen this before on issues on like red cards with VAR. It's when you slow it down and you pause it on the impact. Yeah, that looks like it's a lead breaker, but it's not really. But yeah, VAR. There's so many issues with VAR still. I do think it has improved this season after the Euro Championship last season. It has improved since last time Watford were in the Premier League. But there's still flaws and errors, and they got to sort it out. There's so many creases that need ironing out for me. But unfortunately, Watford wasn't given it, or however you look at it. But yeah, Watford went in at half time 0-0 against Burnley. I would have taken that. Like we've said, we would have probably taken a point out of this result if it was offered to us before the game. So definitely take it going in 0-0 at half time. Watford started very slowly in the second half. I think it was within 15 seconds. Burnley just hit the crossbar after the wind blew it onto the crossbar from a Weghorst shot.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Do you see that, James? He had a shot and then it just spun up in the air, and then next minute, I think everyone. I was watching the reactions of the defenders when it went up in the air because Samir got some criticism in the pre-match analyst from Martin Keown saying that he's got to be on his toes and he's got to look to react like the ball hasn't gone out of play. And when the ball went up into the air, Samir was just stood there just watching it, and then I was like, "Come on, be on your toes, just react." And then it hit the crossbar, and then the moment it hit the crossbar, you saw Samir run after the ball, and I was just like, you can kind of see what Martin Keown was alluding to in it, because there's not enough movement sometimes off the ball from what the players to get back into position. But yeah, that was a weird one how it came off the crossbar.
Yeah, it was very weird. I think the weather was absolutely dreadful yesterday. I mean, I was out all day in Milton Keynes, and it was even breezy there, so I can't imagine what it was like up north in Burnley. I thought Ben Foster probably got a bit stranded as well. He was kind of ball watching a lot, and I think as you say, Ben, Watford defenders are very very well known to kind of watch the ball but not do much about it. But look, it hit the bar. Weghorst did cause us some problems. He's big, he's 6'6", he's strong. It was his debut. He wanted to score. He come very, very close there, with a little bit of help from the weather, but obviously, it hit the bar. Watford got off a bit lucky there, but I'm not too fast. I moved on from that very, very swiftly. And actually, throughout the second half, I think Watford played well, all things considering. The weather, Burnley trying to frustrate the game, break it up. We couldn't really string more than 5-6 passes together at a time. So I thought we dealt defensively with Burnley, relatively well. Obviously, apart from that Weghorst incident where he got touched on the ball, got a shot away, deflection onto the bar. That was really the only moment in the match where I thought, we're in a bit of trouble here. But apart from that incident, I felt largely comfortable, I'd say, with the Watford defence.
Yeah, I felt like we rode the storm. Because I don't think Burnley really offered too much. I think we dealt with Weghorst and Cornet really well. Considering we was going into the game going, our defence against those two, what's going to happen? But I thought we did really well, and I think it helps when our defence got that support from our midfield. I thought KMB was good again. It was breaking up play. I do think when he went off and Cleverley came on, Cleverley had a bit of a shocker, and I do like Tom Cleverley. We've all said about it before how he's a workhorse and that, but he looks a bit leggy lately, and he doesn't really look up to scratch for me. And I think that kind of weakened us when Tom Cleverley came on. But Watford, like you say, James, we did have a better chances in that second half, or in the game actually. João Pedro had that header from a Kushka's cross.
Well, I feel like I've done better with that as well. I think he got above his man. He just needed to put it either side of the keeper, really, and headed it straight to the keeper. And on another day that would have gone in, and that kind of reminded me of the goal he scored against Newcastle. Ball whipped in, João Pedro gets his head on it. I was expecting that to go into the back of the net, but unfortunately, it wasn't to be. But as you say, it's good that Pedro is getting into them positions. And at the moment, I think Pedro is pretty much carrying this Watford team. His ability is there for everyone to see. And as we discussed earlier, when Sarr comes back, when Dennis comes back, our attack, surely Ben, it's one of the best attacks in that bottom 5-6 teams in the table. It's got to be. We've got such good quality players there. It's just the defence that we've had problems with this season, which hopefully Roy Hodgson's going to solve. And Roy Hodgson for me has just got to get the balance right between defence and attack. I think under Ranieri, we were very much focused on pressing high. Trying to win the ball back and counter-attacking, whereas under Roy Hodgson, I'm hoping he can still utilise that attacking talent while keeping that defensive balance. So I do think it's going to be interesting to see how we set up when Ismaila Sarr and Dennis do return, next to João Pedro and Joshua King.
And I think that's what gives us a good chance of staying in this division still, James. I think it's about that balance, isn't it? It's about keeping the clean sheets, I know you're not going to keep a clean sheet in every game in the Premier League, but there's a good chance you'll probably keep a clean sheet every 3 games maybe. And if you manage to do that and you score goals up the upper end of the pitch, it gives you a good chance. And I do think we have the better attackers in the club, probably the bottom 5 teams in the Premier League. I think we've got better attackers, and I think we've scored more goals than all of the bottom 5 at the moment as well. So I will say, James, as well, going back to that João Pedro header, if that fell to Emmanuel Dennis, that's in the back of the net, because you've seen how he's finished with headers this season. He gets a good connection on it. I don't know if the weather conditions affected João Pedro's ability to get his head onto that and get a proper connection onto it, but I imagine if Emmanuel Dennis was on the end of that, that would have been 1-0 Watford. But like you say, we've got the players coming back. Emmanuel Dennis missed the game through suspension. He'll be back for West Ham game Tuesday night. We got Ismaila Sarr coming back. He'll probably be back for a Brighton game, whether he'll be on the bench or starting, we don't know. But that's going to be brilliant for Watford. And if we can get that balance, get our defence right, and it looks like we're on the way of getting that defence getting it right, because it has been better than the Norwich game. Much better improvement. We actually defended as a unit. There was no individual errors, and it just looks more solid. And I've been reading bits of a week about saying how Roy Hodgson is as a manager, and I've seen a lot of praise about being a man manager, like talking to everyone in the defence individually and letting them know what your role is in this defence and what he expects of you. And he's gone through the whole back four talking to them, and he's gone to Samir, he's gone to Cathcart, he's gone to Kiko, he's gone to Kamara, and he's like told them how vital they are to this Watford team and their role and what he expects of them. And I think we haven't had that before with Claudio Ranieri, and like telling them what they have to do in that defence. What your job is to do is to keep the ball out the back of the net, and no mistakes from here on in. And I think we're starting to see that. I know it's early days with Roy Hodgson, but he's got a good record that he had at Palace, at Fulham, at West Brom, at keeping sides up in this division and keeping them organised and keeping that shape of the side. And I don't think we've had a good shape to the team at all this season, really. Even early stages at the start of the season, even when Cisco was here. But now it looks like, I know it's just one game in, I'm saying it's early days, James, but Roy Hodgson's given us hope, hasn't he? He's given us hope to believe that. I know it's a big task, but we've probably got the best man in the job to try and keep us in the division, haven't we?
Well, I'm going to be slightly different to you. I'm not getting too excited yet. I think obviously Burnley is a difficult game, but Burnley I think are the lowest scorers in the division. I think they've had the most 0-0 draws this season, so it was to be expected that the game was going to be a low scoring game, and it did end 0-0 ultimately. So obviously, in terms of keeping a clean sheet, I think if you are going to keep a clean sheet, we'll probably do it against Burnley, as they have had issues scoring goals this season. I do think you're right, though, Ben. I do think that, from what we saw against Burnley, we did look a lot more defensively solid. I am a little bit concerned how we're going to fit all of our players into the team if we continue with 4-3-3, if we continue with the 4-4-4 system, 4-4-2 system, sorry, because we've got Imran Louza back from AFCON, obviously. And then we mentioned Ismaila Sarr and Emmanuel Dennis. And, one of the attacking players will probably have to drop out. Do you go with a Musa Sissoko, Imran Louza midfield 2, and then have Ismaila Sarr on the right, Dennis on the left? But that means Kuchka's then dropped to the bench. So there's a lot of different variations of team we could go for. And I think Hodgson's probably just going to do it on the game-to-game basis. What threat does the team pose we're coming up against? These are the players we should put in to counter that threat, because we've got so many talented players at our disposal. I mean, Dan Gosling's even been left out of the Premier League squad. So, we've got a lot of players at the club. James. Yeah, it's very interesting that it's been left out. But to be honest, he wasn't picked under Zisco, really, under Ranieri, and obviously, that someone had to be left out, and ultimately, it was Dan Gosling. So I think the point I'm trying to make is we've got a lot of talented players at our disposal, and obviously we've got West Ham Tuesday, Brighton Saturday. I think we could see two completely different teams in the games because of the depth and the talent we got at the club.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be difficult to fit these players into a Roy Hodgson 4-4-2. I think there's going to be players who're going to be left out and going to be on the bench. But looking at the Watford squad, on paper, they look like we've got the players for a good 4-3-3 formation. But performances-wise, it hasn't looked like that. Attacking-wise, the front three, superb. But the rest of the team, it's a team game, and you have to play as a team. You can't just be like, right, we've got outstanding front three players. You play, and hopefully we outscore the oppositions. It doesn't work out like that majority of the time. You have to perform as a team, and you've got to have that defensive unit and structure. So I can see why Roy Hodgson's gone to a 4-4-2. We've seen it under Javi Gracia before as well, and it worked under Javi as well. Remember when Will Hughes was playing on the left of midfield, wasn't he? But he was tucking in and making it narrow and making it defensively solid as that unit. And I think Watford, since Javi's days in the Premier League especially, we haven't been that tight in defence. So it's interesting to see that Roy Hodgson has brought this back to Watford. And look, I don't mind a 4-4-2. It's very old school, but it makes you solid. It makes you harder to break down. And that's what Sean Dyche said yesterday. He was saying he wasn't too sure what Watford he was going to get against yesterday with Roy Hodgson. He knows what kind of formations Roy Hodgson's played in the past, but he didn't know how Watford were exactly going to line up. And he mentioned the 4-4-2 and about how difficult it made Burnley to break Watford down with Watford playing that 4-4-2. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward, because obviously, like you say, Imran Loser, I think he's brilliant in that three-man midfield, but does he really fit into a 4-4-2? If he does fit in, James, how do you fit Imran Loser into a 4-4-2? Who do you play next to him? Do you put him as the deeper of the midfield, or it's going to be difficult?
I don't even think you necessarily put him centrally. I think if you play Imran Loser in the 4-4-2 system, I think maybe you put him on playing as almost like a right midfielder. How Will Hughes used to play
Kushka was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think maybe you go Sissoko, Kuchka, Loser, and then maybe play Sema or Dennis out on the left and Joshua King, Pedro up front. But then again, where does Sarr fit in? So this is why I'm not Watford manager, because quite frankly, I haven't got a clue what to do really. Ideally, I do like the 4-3-3 system. It is my favorite system in football. I'd like to keep it. But as you say, it's quite evident that defensively, it's just not helping us at all. And as soon as we switch to this 4-4-2 system against Burnley, we suddenly keep a clean sheet. So, I'd assume, Roy Hodgson will keep that system, because he's seen that, we did get a clean sheet, and largely we weren't really threatened that much defensively. I think Burnley's only real chance, in the game come via Maxwell Cornet, and that was a shot from distance. So, that was just us forcing Burnley to take long shots essentially. So, I thought it was a good defensive performance, and it's going to be interesting to see how we set up going forward. But as I say, I like the 4-3-3, but if we stick with the 4-4-2, it's up to Roy, where he puts our players.
Well, one player who won't be featuring in a 4-4-2 for Watford, or in any formation for Watford this season now, is Ozan Tufan, James. The season-long loan from Fenerbahce has been terminated by mutual consent. The Turkish midfielder made 9 appearances for Watford in all competitions after arriving in August. He arrived obviously in the summer after Watford were trying to fill that gap of Hughes and Chalobah leaving, and we was kind of like panicking, weren't we? We got Kushka in for like the 34-year-old Slovakian, and then we brought in Tufan as well. We was like, we just need centre midfielders. Who are we going to get? Who's available? So we got these people in, and it just didn't work out for Tufan. The Turkish supporters really pulled the walls over our eyes, didn't they, when they said he was the Turkish Pogba. I've seen a few people saying he was more like the Turkish Pombet. He wasn't good, was he, James? He's probably one of the worst signings Watford have had in recent years.
I agree. I think he's been absolutely terrible when he's played. Effort levels are low. Fitness levels are obviously very low as well. I don't know what's happening behind the
Uh,
scenes, but watching
Fitness
him in this.
levels, James, just quickly. Do you remember when he came to Watford? He like went through an intense training camp at Udinese, or he shifted a couple of pounds. What on earth happened to him when he was at Watford? Because he looks like he put about 2-3 stone back on.
Well, I don't know what they're feeding our players in the canteen, but apparently, what I read some Turkish article. I basically translated it to English via Google Translate, and
I
apparently
was
he
going to
lost.
say, do you speak Turkish, James?
No, unfortunately not. But in this article I was reading, apparently he lost 8 kilograms while he was at Watford. So he actually lost weight while he was at the club. Um, Look, I think with Ozan Tufan, that it's just one of these. Not every signing works out ultimately. Because if every signing worked out, Watford would be top of the Premier League. So obviously, it didn't work out for Watford. It obviously was, a panicked, buy, if you will. I don't think we necessarily, I don't think he was necessarily our first choice midfielder to bring in. I would have much rather we spend the money on renewing Will Hughes' contract, putting the money into that. But again, for whatever reason, they didn't do that. I'm a little bit concerned though, Ben, because I presume you've seen on Twitter these reports about there's still some clause in the contract where if Watford stay up, we still
Yeah.
have to buy him for €7 million. I don't know if that's still active or if Watford have potentially negotiated that, but I am a little bit concerned about if we do stay up in the Premier League that Ozan Tufan, will be returning to Watford for €7 million. I really hope that does not happen.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen as well. Watford recruitment, if that happens, they've had an absolute mare to sign a player where you've ended up terminating the loan halfway through the season because of his performances, and then ending up to pay that fee at the end of the season still if you stay in the division. Whoever's sanctioned that needs sacking
I mean, we'd
because
have
that's
to we'd have to
absolutely
call up
terrible.
some like scam or fraud line and claim get some lawyers involved and because yeah, I mean, what an awful deal. That would probably be the worst deal, the worst transfer deal I've ever seen. If Ozan Tufan rocks up to Watford next season, I would not believe it. I would literally, I'll probably just lie in bed and cry. Like honestly, I do not want to see Ozan Tufan in the Watford shirt again. I don't know what the problem with him was because he never. The thing is, he never
It
really
came
done
with hype,
anything.
didn't he? It was all hyped up.
Well, I don't know whether we're false expectations, but he never actually did anything majorly wrong though. Like he never really made a massive mistake. He never really. He was just a bit meh.
For
He just
me,
didn't.
he never looked interested from the moment he was here. The games just passed him by. He could never get like a foot on the ball and like take control of the game or do anything like the composure on the ball. Like I say this now, James. This is the last time I watched a player on YouTube when we were announced a signing because he looked absolutely phenomenal. And then he just rocks up and he's just like, who's this guy?
Yeah, but I think if we watched some highlights of you playing football, Ben, you'd probably look like Ronaldinho. And then when we actually watch you
I
for a
am
full 90
Ronaldinho,
minutes,
mate.
you are Ronaldinho, are you? Yeah,
Yeah, no. I probably look
no,
like I don't know, just yeah, probably too fan to be fair, but yeah,
highlights are very deceiving. Let's just leave it as that.
yeah, no, definitely, I agree. And just quickly before we wrap up the pod, we're playing again Tuesday night. It's away at the London Stadium against David Moyes' West Ham. They've had a good start to the season so far. They had a scare on Saturday against Kidderminster Harriers. They were 1-0 down to like the 93rd minute, and then Declan Rice managed to score a good goal. And then at the end of it, added on time at extra time, they scored again to break the hearts of Kidderminster fans in the FA Cup, and they went through 2-1 winners in the end, and now they're through to the fifth round of the FA Cup. But I don't know if you saw, James, when they lined up for that game, they rested a few key players. It was a weakened West Ham side. I know a few players started, like Jared Bowen started, um, and then Diop at the back, and I think Cresswell as well. But other than that, it was all like fringe players, and then they brought Rice off the bench and other players to try and get back into the game. So it looked like they kind of had one game on the West Ham game Tuesday night. Um, what are you expecting Tuesday against West Ham? Because obviously they've started the season so well, and look, a couple of years ago we was in a relegation battle with them, and they could have gone down if we stayed up. It was us, Villa, and West Ham, wasn't it? It was that final team to get relegated, and Watford went down. And since then, West Ham have pushed on. They got into the Europa League, and this season they look like they're trying to get to that next level and maybe get in Champions League football. So they're doing brilliant this season, aren't they, James?
Yeah, they're doing very, very well. I'm really impressed with David Moyes. Actually, obviously had a tough time at Manchester United, tough time at Everton as well. But I think West Ham, seems to be his club. He's doing a fantastic job there. His recruitment's amazing. I think with West Ham as well, they give pretty much David Moyes free reign over recruitment. He can go out and buy who he wants, and the owners don't really quibble about that. Whereas at Watford, it's more the owners recruiting for the manager rather than the manager recruiting for himself. So I think that's a key aspect in terms of that as well. Of course, it's going to be a difficult game. I mean, you could argue, West Ham are now, a top 8, top 6 side even. If they get Champions League football this season, they'll kick on even more from that. So I am very, very concerned. I know a lot of Watford fans are very confident going into the game, and I usually am quite confident.
Who? Who's confident?
However, Ben, unfortunately today, I'm not going to bring any confidence to my score prediction. I do think that it is going to be so tough for Watford. We're going to the London Stadium, massive crowd. Declan Rice is superb. I love him so much. They've got fantastic players, and I think it's going to be a really, really tough test for Watford. So unfortunately, I do think we will lose the game. I think Dennis returning is going to be a key factor for us. I think he'll add something different to our attack. He's had a rest as well, so I think that's positive. But it's going to be very, very tough. So I can only unfortunately see a Watford lost. However, like Burnley, I would take a draw. But you can only take draws for so long before you have to start winning games. So it's going to be tough. So I'd take a 0-0 draw, but ideally I'd love to win the game.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Watford in the next upcoming fixtures as well. Like, I know you're saying you can only take draws for a certain amount of games, but Watford's like next, let's say about 6 games. It's like we've got West Ham away Tuesday night, then we've got Brighton at home Saturday. Then the following Saturday, we're away to Aston Villa, who look decent under Steven Gerrard. Then Watford, the rearranged fixture with Crystal Palace now, is on Wednesday, the 23rd of February, at home at Vicarage Road under the lights. And then we're away to Manchester United at the end of the month. And then we're the first fixture in March, we're at home to Arsenal. So there's tough games there. So, like you say, you can only take points for us as long as you can. It's going to be difficult. I would personally take a point away at West Ham if you offer it to me now. I don't think we're going to get 3 points. I think it's going to be a really tough game. But if Roy sets us up exactly the same like we did against Burnley, I'm not expecting us to outplay West Ham. I'm not expecting us to get much out of it. I just wanted to see another committed performance, another game where we're actually trying and put bodies on the line. And I do think it's not impossible to get a point at West Ham. Who knows, if you keep it tight and maybe you can nick one up the other end towards the end of the game, I would take that all day long. But like you say, James, Emmanuel Dennis is back. I imagine he would start, but who would he come in for? For me, I would maybe look to take Ken Sema out the side, maybe put João Pedro on the left of the 4-4-2, and then you've got Emmanuel Dennis and Josh King as the 2, because I think he'll probably stick with a 4-4-2 for West Ham. What do you reckon, James?
Yeah, I do think he'll stick with a 4-4-2. I think he would have seen enough against Burnley to suggest he'd stick with that formation. As I said earlier, I think the 4-4-2 is limited in terms of how many attacking players you can put on the pitch, because with the 4-4-2, normally you'd have 4 central midfielders in the forward midfield. Essentially, you wouldn't normally put a right winger or a left winger in there. So I do think someone will have to drop out potentially. I don't know. I'm struggling to answer your question, Ben, because it's so difficult as to what Roy's going to do. I think when Sarr comes back, I'll be even more baffled as to what they're going to do. But there's only two striking positions essentially, and then you've got 2 wide positions, which you can either put a Cleverley in there or a loser in there, or you can put a Sarr in there or a Dennis in there. So it depends really on the game. If you want to go more attacking, more defensive. Obviously, he can change the formation mid-game. There's nothing stopping Roy from doing that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And, you know, hopefully whatever Roy goes with, hopefully we'll get the win regardless.
Exactly. Well, Roy's got us all behind him. We're all backing him all the way. It's been a positive start under Roy Hodgson. We've got our first point under Roy Hodgson. We've got our first clean sheet of the season. I was thinking earlier that the last time Watford had a clean sheet, I didn't have a daughter, and now she's 17 months old. So it just shows how long it's been since Watford have had a clean sheet in the Premier League. But yeah, that's it for another podcast of the Voices of the Vic. Tonight it's just been me and James. Next week we're hoping to have a third member on with us, but we'll reveal details near the time. Me and James will also be back to hopefully discuss the Watford West Ham games midweek.
Well, we might potentially be joined by Mr. Mike Duffy for that. We're not too sure yet, but Mike might pop on for that.
Yeah, potentially with Mike Duffy, but I'm not getting my hopes up, Mike. James. We've seen what Mike's been like lately, so I'm not getting too excited about it. I'm just preparing myself for just you and me. If Mike comes along, that's a lovely surprise, and it'll be good to hear that Birmingham accent again. But yeah, I'm not counting my chickens just yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe the video. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, don't forget to give us a rating. I've seen on Spotify you can actually give us a rating now. It used to be just Apple Podcasts, but you can do it on Spotify now. So yeah, make sure you're giving us those 5 stars. And yeah, me and James will be back later on in the week, hopefully to discuss a Watford point, a Watford 3 points. I just don't want to discuss as a fleet. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you later. Come on, you all.